Good morning. Today, expert sheep shearers from New Zealand and Australia get 11th hour permission to do their seasonal work in the UK. And if you're tempted to bring back meat or dairy delicacies from your travels, think again.
It's probably the most infectious viral disease in animals known to man. And so disease can take hold very, very quickly. Only a small number of viral particles can lead to infection.
We'll hear why foot and mouth disease in Europe has led to a UK ban on personal imports of some foods. First, though, this week we're focusing on celebrating spring and talking about the tasks on farm at this time of year. Lambing is well underway, but once that's over, it's time to get the shears out and for the ewes to lose their winter wool. In a moment, I'll be discussing the visa arrangements for this year's influx of overseas shearers. But first, Fiona Clampin has been to talk to Ed Goodfellow, a shearer and competition judge in West Dorset, who's been testing out his kit for the main shearing season ahead.
So one is a comb and one is a cutter, and just one runs over the top of the other one.
Yeah.
And it cuts just like a pair of scissors, but very, very fast. Actually, it's no different to what's in like your clippers and your hairdressers. Right.
You ever tried to cut your hair with it?
Oh yeah, I've done my hair. Yeah. We cut friends' hair with it once. We did. It cuts all right. Don't worry about that. Right. Let's see if this works. First thing you do is we pull up. We sit her on her bottom. Is what we do, and she's quite happy relax on her bottom. She sits on one side of her cheek. We start by taking the belly off. Once the belly's off, we push out one leg and back through the crutch on the sheep to the second hind leg. Once the crutch is out, we move into the first leg, and we call this the undermine. It goes down, and we push these blows from the first leg right down over to the backbone, and open up the first leg of the sheep right down to her tail. And we run from the top of her tail up her backbone, and that is the first quarter of the sheep done.
I'm really surprised at how compliant she is. She's very quiet.
Yeah, I mean, what we're shearing, these are poles, and poles are regarded amongst the shearers as probably the worst sheep in the world to shear. Not because they don't shear, they shear very well. They have attitude. Let's call it attitude. You come up the neck and push out under her chin. Okay, we've got to clear her face off. Poles are quite awkward. They have wool on their face, on their ears, down their legs, where some breeds don't. Some breeds are naturally more open. And the whole time, you see I'm moving my feet, I'm moving the sheep. We roll it round off the neck, off the first shoulder, round, slowly dropping her down. We lie her then till she's led on her back.
When would you do the shearing?
It's more to do with them having lambs and the right time for them to be shorn. About 6 weeks, 8 weeks after they've had their lambs, the lambs are getting bigger. The lambs are starting to eat a bit more grass. It takes the pressure off the mum. She then puts a bit more energy back into her own body rather than milking off her own body and struggling. She actually puts a bit of condition back on. So then it's the right time to shear them. Slowly stepping backwards so the sheep comes up towards her. All the way down the last side. And punch right from the last side. You go from right out her hind leg.
It does look very physical.
It is very physical. Lots of things are hard to learn, but I would say it's probably one of the hardest things to learn to shear through, because there is no shortcuts to it. There is no learn to hold the handpiece, learn to hold the sheep. You have to do the whole thing in one. It's a live animal, and when people are learning, because we do a lot of teaching, like, people are terrified they're going to cut the animals, and it makes them more nervous. Once you've learned to shear, you need to go away and do a few hundred, and then come back and then learn a bit more. To the top of the tail, and that's it. One shorn sheep.
Ed Goodfellow there in Dorset. After months of lobbying from the industry, overseas sheep shearers have been granted a special concession to enter the UK for this season. Since 2011, the visa has been renegotiated on an annual basis, and this year the decision has come at the 11th hour. Jill Hewitt, Chief Executive of the National Association of Agricultural Contractors, told me why shearers from New Zealand and Australia are such an important part of the workforce.
It's really just to sort of strengthen the UK shearing workforce that we've got. We've got about 15 million ewes to be shorn each year, and we've got some UK shearers, but not enough to successfully get all those sheep shorn, particularly if the weather doesn't exactly go to plan.
And how close to the wire was this decision this year?
Extremely close. The special exemption we've got starts on the 1st of April, and we found out last week, the end of last week, that we were going to have this concession.
What usually happens then?
In an ideal world, I will be in touch with the Minister in January, and then we'll have some, I suppose, negotiations and exchange of information with the Home Office and DEFRA. And then the decision has usually been reached well before the 1st of April. But this year, for various reasons, it's been delayed. So it's just meant that the contractors in the UK haven't been able to get things organised. And obviously, shearers overseas haven't been able to get flights booked.
And did you sense that there was reluctance on the part of the government to allow visas for shearers? Was that why it was delayed?
To be honest, I think it's been workload and other things going on within the Home Office as well. This is obviously a small scheme, and it's really hard to know. Obviously, we're not particularly pro-immigration at the moment, so these sorts of special schemes aren't particularly welcomed. But this is a really important scheme that we really do need.
And what would the consequences have been, though, if they hadn't been granted visas?
It would just mean it was a lot more difficult to get all the sheep shorn in time for the summer. And then if you don't get them shorn, ideally by professionals that can shear, at speed and capably, it puts animal welfare at risk because sheep get too hot. They're then at risk for things like sheep scab or blowfly.
So basically, these Antipodean shearers are pretty expert and quick as well, aren't they?
Some of these professional shearers can shear 300 to 400 sheep a day, which makes a massive difference when, some of our contractor members will be bringing in a team of perhaps 5 overseas shearers with a round in front of them of maybe 60, 70,000 sheep to shear. So it's really, it makes a lot of difference, that extra speed.
Although I have to say during COVID, they weren't allowed to come over, were they? But we managed just about, didn't we?
We managed, but it was a stretch. And we were very lucky that year that we had perfect weather conditions. We all remember the summer of COVID where the sun shone wall to wall. And that meant that we didn't have any or very few down days where people couldn't shear. But then we were having to move shearers around the UK, particularly bringing Welsh shearers over into England to help support the shearing teams. So the shearing got done, but it was a very difficult year, and there would have been some particularly smaller flocks that didn't get shorn when they should have done.
So are you expecting to have to renegotiate this every single year? Wouldn't it be easier to have an agreement over several years rather than having to organise this every year?
That would be amazing, Anna. However, with these types of special exemptions, because it is a concession from the normal visa process, I think it's fairly standard for them to have to be renegotiated every year.
Jill Hewitt. Now, if you're travelling in mainland Europe this Easter and thinking about possibly bringing back some local delicacies, think again. Following outbreaks of foot and mouth disease in Germany, Hungary and on its border with Slovakia, restrictions on the food you're allowed to bring in have changed significantly. You're not allowed to bring in meat from any EU country except for poultry. The banned list includes pork, beef, lamb, mutton, goat or venison, or any dairy products, including cheese and yoghurt. It's best to check on the DEFRA website for the details. So how great is the potential for cured meats or cheeses in your suitcase to transmit foot and mouth, or FMD? Gareth Haitley is president of the Scottish branch of the British Veterinary Association, and he worked on the major 2001 foot and mouth outbreak.
It's probably the most infectious viral disease in animals known to man. And so disease can take hold very, very quickly. Only a small number of viral particles can lead to infection, as well as being transmitted by live animals. We've already got a ban on live animals, quite rightly. It can be spread both by the wind and also by things like cured meat. It will survive in cured meat, fresh meat, milk, those sorts of products.
To some, it might feel that it's a bit of a leap between a well-packaged, legally produced ham, salami, cheese in an airport duty-free and a major disease outbreak. So is this ban proportionate?
Yeah, I think it's proportionate because of the risk of the impact of getting FMD in the UK. I went through Madrid myself last weekend, and there's always the temptation to pick up a packet of this or that, but you don't know where it's been produced, and there's no indications in the meat that the virus is there, so there's always a risk.
We heard from the National Pig Association last week that the level of security and monitoring at the ports, they believe, was inadequate. I mean, we've heard from politicians as well, evidence given to the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee about the problems with actually preventing illegal imports. Do you feel that the port system, as it is at the moment, is good enough?
It's creaky. I think there's just sheer potential for materials to come in from all over the world. Trying to police that is a really, really difficult thing. But the important thing is that we try and raise awareness to not just our farmers, but also those people who are travelling into the country, that we have sufficient signage in airports and other places where entry points, so that people are aware of the risk and why it's being done. So at least through legal imports, we can try and reduce that.
This ban came about because of foot and mouth outbreaks in Germany earlier this year, then in Hungary and Slovakia on the border. So how concerning is the situation on the continent right now?
It's quite concerning because we don't have any indication where any of these infections came from. We know broadly where they came from because of the serotype of the virus. So it'll have come from the Middle East, the Balkans, sort of Turkey area. But that's a big area. And there's a lot of movements of people and animals due to the religious festivals that occur at this time of year. So there's multiple routes where it potentially could have come in.
So how confident are you in the UK surveillance then for foot and mouth, for instance?
One of the things that's happened recently is, you'll be aware of, is there's been a blue tongue outbreak, and there is some overlap in symptoms in live animals between blue tongue and foot and mouth disease, and having greater awareness of a notifiable disease that's already present in the country is a great help towards disease surveillance on the ground.
And what about our readiness for an outbreak here? Have there been any big exercises?
The UK government reviews its readiness every year. There are regular exercises carried out. I think the last one was in 2018. There's always an argument that we should do these things more frequently. They are quite expensive, but given foot and mouth and the impact that can have, it cost us $5 billion in 2001. I dread to think what that is in today's money, but it's worth every penny of preparedness.
President of the Scottish branch of the British Veterinary Association, Gareth Haitley. That's all from us. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Sarah Swadling. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.